Can you answer why the Secret Service didn't place a single agent on the roof?
We are still looking into the advanced process.
How many Secret Service agents were assigned to President Trump on the day of the rally?
Again, I'm not going to get into the specifics of the numbers.
He was known to be suspicious before former President Trump took the stage.
That is the information I have received.
Did they confront him? Did they go up to him? Did they talk to him?
I do not have those details at this time. I would like to be able to answer those questions. Again, sir, at this time, I'm unable to answer questions to provide clarity. I don't have an answer for that.
Was there ever a moment where the Secret Service actually considered pausing the rally?
The Secret Service would have paused the rally had they known or been
So the
told
answer is
there
no.
was an actual threat.
The answer is no.
I personally do not review security plans for events that take place across the country.
Any of them?
Do you know what Stuart Knight did when he was in charge at the time of the Secret Service? Do you know what he did afterwards?
He remained on duty.
He resigned.
Why was the rooftop left naked to begin with? Can you?
I can't speak to the specifics of this particular event site.
Was Mr. Crooks acting alone?
Again, I would have to refer you to the FBI. I don't want to speak to specifics of the event.
Okay, is the gun already on the roof, or did the shooter carry the gun up with him?
I do not have that information at this time. I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bullshit.
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today.
And you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos.
But there were sufficient resources
What did you just
that
say?
were given to
Did you just
the
say there were
former
sufficient
president's
resources? President Trump
event
got
that
shot.
day.
Someone got killed.
Do you have a timeline at all from any of the day?
I have a timeline that does not have specifics.
That's shocking.
Start with the building that the shooter used to shoot President Trump from. At any point Saturday, did the Secret Service have an agent on top of that roof?
Sir, I'm sure as you can imagine that we are just 9 days out from this incident, and there's still an ongoing investigation. And so I want to make sure that any information that we are providing to you is factual.
You can't, okay. Why did the Secret Service not, can you answer why the Secret Service didn't place a single agent on the roof?
We are still looking into the advanced process and the decisions that were made.
Okay. Wasn't that building within the perimeter that should be secured? Do we agree with that?
The building was outside of the perimeter on the day of the visit. But again, that is one of the things that during the investigation we want to take a look at and determine whether or not other decisions should have been made.
One of the things that you said, I believe in an interview, that there wasn't an agent on the roof because it was a sloped roof. Is that normal, and do you fear that that immediately creates an opportunity for future would-be assassins to look for a slanted roof? I mean, this is a huge question that every American has. Why wasn't a Secret Service agent on the roof? And there have been reports that agents were supposed to be on the roof, but it was hot that day and they didn't want to be on the roof. Can you answer any of those questions, Director?
So I appreciate you asking me that question, Chairman. I should have been more clear in my answer when I spoke about where we place personnel in that interview. What I can tell you is that there was a plan in place to provide overwatch, and we are still looking into responsibilities and who was going to provide overwatch. But the Secret Service in general, not speaking specifically to this incident, when we are providing overwatch, whether that be through counter snipers or other technology, prefer to have sterile rooftops.
Did the Secret Service use any drones for surveillance that day?
So again, I'm not going to get into specifics of that day in itself, but there are times during a security plan that the Secret Service does deploy an asset like a drone.
There were reports that the shooter used a drone just a few hours before the rally start time. Is that accurate?
I have heard those same reports, and again, am waiting for the final report.
Do you know, if you can't answer the question, that's your answer. But can you answer this? Do you know, I'm not asking yes or no, but do you know if the shooter used a drone before the shooting?
That information has been passed to us from the FBI.
How many Secret Service agents were assigned to President Trump on the day of the rally?
Again, I'm not going to get into the specifics of the numbers of personnel that we had there, but we feel that there was a sufficient number of agents assigned.
There are reports that several agents assigned to the rally on July 13th were temporary agents, agents not normally assigned to President Trump. Is that accurate?
What I can tell you is that the agents that were assigned to former President Trump are Secret Service agents that provide close protection to him, and that was what was actual on that day.
So he was known to be suspicious before former President Trump took the stage.
That is the information I have received.
Why was he allowed to take the stage with a suspicious person having been identified in the crowd?
So I appreciate the question, and I'd like to make 2 points. If the detail had been past information that there was a threat, the detail would never have brought the former president out onto stage. That is what we do, and that is who we are. We are charged with protecting all of our protectees.
So you distinguish between someone who is suspicious and someone who's threatening, is that right?
I do. There are a number of times at protective events where suspicious people are identified, and those individuals have to be investigated and determined what is it that identifies that person as suspicious.
The Secret Service did not know that the gunman actually had a weapon before President Trump was allowed to get up on the stage.
To the best of our knowledge and the facts that we have at this point, that is correct.
But is that right, that the serial number was the key information which led to the identification of the shooter?
That is my understanding, sir, yes.
The day after President Trump is shot, Secret Service spokesman Anthony Guglielmi said, quote, "The assertion that a member of the former president's security team requested additional security resources that the U.S. Secret Service or the Department of Homeland Security rebuffed is absolutely false." The next day, Secretary Mayorkas said, "That is an unequivocally false assertion. We had not received any request for additional security measures that were rebuffed." But 5 days later, the Washington Post said this: "Top officials repeatedly rejected requests from Donald Trump's security detail for more personnel." The next day, the New York Times said this: "Mr. Guglielmi acknowledged that the Secret Service had turned down some requests for additional federal security assets for Mr. Trump's detail." So which is it? Because both statements can't be true. Were you guessing or lying when you said you didn't turn down requests from President Trump's detail?
Neither, sir, and I appreciate the question.
Well, what were you doing? Because those statements don't jive.
So what I can tell you is that for the event in Butler, there were no requests that were denied. As far as requests...
Well, maybe they got tired of asking. Maybe you turned them down so darn much, they said, not worth asking. How many times did you turn them down ahead of that?
I think that it is important to distinguish between what some people may view as a denial of an asset or a request.
Well, is Mr. Guglielmi your spokesperson? He said he acknowledged the Secret Service had turned down some requests. I'm asking how many?
A denial of a request does not equal a vulnerability.
Have you talked to the counter sniper who took the shot that took out the bad guy?
Yes, I have.
And can you tell us about that conversation?
I would not want to reveal conversations that I've had with my employees.
But that's exactly the kind of information the American people want to know. American people who pay your salary.
I understand. This is an ongoing investigation. And
Who's all doing the investigating at Secret Service? I know the Inspector General, but is there also an internal investigation in addition to the Inspector General?
We are conducting a mission assurance investigation internally, yes.
You know what it looks like, Director? It looks like you won't answer some pretty basic questions. It looks like you got a 9% raise and you cut corners when it came to protecting one of the most important individuals, most well-known individuals on the planet. A former president, likely the guy who's going to be the next president. Looks like you guys were cutting corners. That's what it looks like to me.
Do we know who made that decision to allow that rooftop to remain as an unprotected area? Do we know who came up with that security plan that omitted that?
Sir, I don't have a specific person to identify for you.
Okay, well, that's what I'm looking for, so let's move on. Did he have a rangefinder?
Yes, he did, but may I explain that at a number of our sites, especially when you're at outdoor venues, a rangefinder is not a prohibited item. It is sometimes an item that is brought in by individuals if you're going to be in the back.
Did anybody confront him on that? Anybody ask him questions? What are you doing with the rangefinder? Anybody confront him on his presence where he was in proximity to the president?
So again, to my knowledge, I believe that that was the process that was taking place, was to locate the individual.
Did they confront him? Did they go up to him? Did they talk to him?
I do not have those details at this time.
Those are important details.
The ubiquity of guns, dangerous weapons in America, like AR-15s, has that made your job, that is to say the mission of the Secret Service, easier or more difficult?
I think the threat environment for protecting our Secret Service protectees is always difficult, and that's dynamic, and it's always evolving.
We stipulate it's always difficult. Again, this is a simple one. Does the ubiquity of guns make your job easier or more difficult today?
I understand the Second Amendment rights of individuals.
I didn't ask that question. I'm not questioning the Second Amendment. I'm asking a simple analysis, Director Cheatle. And I can tell you, you're not making my job easier in terms of assessing your qualification for continuing on as director. Please answer the question. You're the head of the Secret Service. You're speaking on behalf of 8,000 members who put their lives on the line. We just had a failure by your own admission. Do guns make your job easier or harder?
I think the job of the Secret Service is difficult on every day, and we need to make sure that we are mitigating all threats, whether that be
That
weapons,
isn't my question.
personnel.
That is not my question. And now I think you're evading the answer, which is not a hard one.
I am sorry that you feel that way, sir.
Do you have any information at all as to when the letter got there?
I would like to be able to answer those questions. The FBI is still conducting an investigation.
How did the rifle get to the roof?
Again, sir, at this time, I'm unable to answer questions to provide clarity.
Have they cleaned the roof since the assassination attempt?
Have they cleaned the roof?
Right. Has anything been done to the roof? Is it just like it was, whatever, 10 days ago, or not? Has anything been done to the roof?
I don't have an answer for that.
Director Cheatle, as you know, the shooter began shooting at 6:11 p.m. Eastern on July 13th. NBC reported that at 5:51 p.m., 20 minutes before the shooting began, the state police informed the Secret Service of their concern. Now, the rally was not paused at that point, correct?
No.
And according to NBC, just 2 minutes later, at 5:53 p.m., the Secret Service notified its snipers about the gunman. The rally wasn't paused at that point either, correct?
No.
Let me show you some video footage by rally goers. If you could play the video on the screen up here. This was taken 2 minutes before the shooting started. If you could turn up the volume.
Criminals. We have criminals. We have drug dealers. We have people that should not be here.
Right on the roof.
It's much
He's
tougher
standing
than
up now.
it happens.
You went right on the roof, big guy.
Up here.
Ma'am, that doesn't look like suspicious behavior. That looks like threatening behavior to me. And the rally wasn't paused at that point either, correct?
I can tell you, as I stated earlier, sir, that the moment that the shift surrounding the president were aware of an actual threat.
That's a threat right there. The guy's on the roof and everybody's yelling at him.
Yes.
And directing the officer's attention to him. The rally was not paused at that point, correct?
We are currently still combing through communications and when communications were passed.
Well, I can point you to this communication. It's 2 minutes before the shots started ringing out. Director Cheatle, yes or no? Was there ever a moment where the Secret Service actually considered pausing the rally?
The Secret Service would have paused the rally had they known or been
So the
told
answer is
there
no.
was an actual threat.
The answer is no. Correct?
I can speak to you in generalities.
No, I don't want
I don't
generalities. I
know
want
all of the
specifics.
communications
The
that were-
answer is no. You did not consider pausing the rally, correct?
The people that are in charge of protecting the president on that day would never bring the former president out if there was a threat that had been identified.
Well, they did, because we've now identified 3 points in the 20 minutes before the shooting that the threat emerged. Let me point you to something else, which is the building that the shooter was perched on, seen here. This building is called the AGR building. I'm sure that you're familiar with it. It's no more than 150 yards from the stage where Donald Trump stood, yet the security perimeter was drawn such that the AGR building was placed outside of it. Director Cheatle, according to the Washington Post, the AR-15 styled rifle used in the shooting had a range of 400 to 600 yards, and therefore the AGR building was clearly within rifle range of the stage, correct?
Yes.
NBC News has reported that in the days before the rally, the Secret Service had identified the building as a vulnerability that required special attention, correct?
That's reporting from NBC?
Yes.
So I am still looking into an active investigation.
I know, but it's been 9 days. I mean, you should know that, right? And yet, despite the fact that the AGR building was in rifle range of the stage and it was flagged as a vulnerability, this building was put outside of the Secret Service's security perimeter. And I respectfully submit the Secret Service must expand its security perimeter to account for the kinds of weapons that can be used outside the perimeter to endanger the protectees inside the perimeter. Ma'am.
I just wanted to confirm there was only one counter sniper who took one shot? Is that
We had multiple counter sniper teams available
yeah, on the
that
premises, but is only one took one shot? Is that correct, or only one?
Correct.
I think it's troubling for a lot of us that the number one question everyone in America is wondering is why was the roof left open? And after 9 days, we should at least maybe have a little bit of that information. And when you come to this committee hearing and you don't have anything to say about that, it's very, very troubling. Did you review the security plan for this event?
I personally do not review security plans for events that take place across the country.
Any of them?
We have a number of events that take
Who's
place.
the top level official who reviews the security plans?
There's a number of people that review security plans.
Who's
as they
ultimately
unfold.
responsible for signing off on a security plan?
It's a conjunction of personnel. There are people on the ground, there are supervisors on the detail, there are people at headquarters.
So there's not one person who says, okay, this is good, it's copacetic, we're going for it?
I think much in the way that we build our security plans, where they are multi-layered.
No doubt there's teams working different aspects of it, but ultimately, isn't there an individual who signs off on the plan?
Much like how we design our security plans, they're multi-layered, there are multiple layers.
So there's no
people.
accountability?
There is accountability, sir.
There's, this is whether it's the FBI or Fauci or anything, it's time after time after time, these multiple layers of accountability turn into layers of plausible deniability in agency after agency after agency. That's got to be fixed.
Would you agree that this is the most serious security lapse since President Reagan was shot in 1981 of the Secret Service?
Yes, sir, I would.
And, do you know what Stuart Knight did when he was in charge at the time of the Secret Service? Do you know what he did afterwards?
He remained on duty.
He resigned. He resigned. And Stuart Knight was not a Democratic appointee or a Republican appointee. Look, I'm not questioning your judgment. I just don't think this is partisan. If you have an assassination attempt on a president, a former president, or a candidate, you need to resign. That's what Stuart Knight did. He was a Republican appointee, and he took responsibility. And I think you need to reflect. This is not a question of you. It's a question of the American people. You cannot go leading a Secret Service agency when there is an assassination attempt on a presidential candidate. I would say that about anyone who is running. And so I guess my question to you is, what's the difference between your position and what Stuart Knight did?
What I will tell you, sir, is that I am dedicated to finding the answers to what happened. And like every Secret Service agent, we don't shirk from our responsibilities. I will remain on and be responsible to the agency, to this committee, to the former president, and to the American public.
But is there a reason you wouldn't just do what Stuart Knight did after the Reagan assassination attempt?
I believe that I provided an answer.
When were you informed that there was a credible threat against President Trump, former President Trump? When did you learn of that?
Sir, the former president has a number of threats.
I didn't ask you that. There was a credible threat from Iran. When were you informed of that? Answer the question.
We have been monitoring the threats
You
for the
knew
former
before.
president.
You knew before the rally, okay? All right. The site security plan is generally drafted by the site supervisor and the site agent, probably out of the Pittsburgh district office. Did they take into account the credible threat against President Trump?
Our personnel take into account the threats that are
Then
out
why
there.
would they leave a building? And I will correct the distance that's been quoted. It was about 140 yards with clear line of sight to the president. Why was that building not occupied on the roof? I mean, you could have put Barney Fife on the roof and kept somebody from getting up there. So why wasn't that done?
The plan that was developed that day encompassed a number of security mitigations.
The issue is the site supervisor, the site agent, and the special agent in charge, who I think signed off on the plan, did not include that in the inner perimeter, and they didn't have a plan to secure the building. As I understand it, the Butler County ESU unit was situated on the second floor of a building next to that, but they didn't have a clear line of sight of the roof. The angle was too severe. The photograph that was taken of the young man, of the shooter, when he had the rangefinder, was taken at 5:15. It wasn't until 5:38 that photograph was transmitted to the Secret Service sniper units. I don't understand the lack of interoperability here in the communication process. I don't understand why people didn't perceive that as a credible threat. The video that Mr. Christian Morphy had shown there was clearly a credible threat. So how is it that all of these mistakes could be made? How many explosive devices were found on or near the site?
Again, I would have to defer you to the FBI.
And there's some things I just don't understand. Why was the building, the ARG building, placed outside of the perimeter when clearly it was close enough for someone to launch an attack?
So again, sir, we are looking into all of the details of how the advanced was comprised, but I can tell you that there was overwatch on that building provided that day.
By a drone?
I'm not going to get into the specifics of technology or assets that were used in
well,
this forum.
I think it's fair to say the overwatch failed because the shooter got up on the roof and stayed there for a while, and people had pointed him out. So do you think that your overwatch was a failure in that case?
I think that we need to know the full details to understand how this occurred.
And why was the rooftop left naked to begin with? Can you tell us that, considering it was within the line of sight and so very close?
Again, I can't speak to the specifics of this particular event site, but what I can tell you is that when the Secret Service develops an advanced plan, they take into account a number of factors when they're building their advance. If there are buildings or areas of concern, and overwatch is one of those mitigations that they want to put in place, then they will cover off areas of responsibility.
I understand that, but the shooter came to the attention of your agency 52 minutes before the former president got to the stage. Did anybody get assigned to watch or cover that individual who had already been seen with a advanced finder on him and other suspicious matters? Was anybody assigned to track him?
So what I'd like to clarify is that a suspicious individual
I got that part.
was
It's
brought
not a threat.
to the attention
I know.
of our personnel. And again, having a rangefinder at an outdoor event.
Well, let me ask you this. When the suspicious person was brought to the attention of the Secret Service, was anybody in the detail ordered to follow and stay with that suspicious person just because they might become a threat?
So we have a number of teams that are on the ground. And again, we are trying to verify the timelines of when those notifications were made to our personnel so that they could assume the responsibility of trying to track that individual.
Because we saw it too. We've seen the things, but you are the 28-year expert. You are the person that, and only you, that can make the changes. And I hear you say, well, I've got to wait for a final report before at 28 years experience. That is why we think what you're doing, the answers you're giving us are not correct, and you are not using your professional expertise. Mr. Chairman, I will allow her to respond.
I am asking those same questions, sir, and I assure you, when I have a full and complete report of exactly what happened, there will be accountability, and we will make changes.
Before I recognize the question, just out of curiosity, Director, it's been 9 days. Every American wants these questions answered. Do you have a ballpark estimate of what Mr. Sessions asked you would be able to answer?
So I can tell
time-wise?
I can tell you on our mission assurance internal investigation, we are targeting to have that completed within 60 days. There's also an external investigation that is going to be taking place. There are a number of Office of Inspector General investigations as well, and we are working in concert. And then, of course, there is the Department of Justice, FBI, criminal investigation.
You established earlier that the building upon which the shooter operated from was outside of that established perimeter, correct, for the Butler, Pennsylvania event?
It was outside of our secure perimeter, yes.
Now, that building was, I believe, 500. How far away was that building from the president?
It was approximately 200 yards.
200 yards. Now, the individual used an AR-15 in order to act out his assassination attempt. An AR-15 has a range of about 400 to 600 yards. My question is, why does the Secret Service perimeter, why is the Secret Service protective perimeter shorter than one of the most popular semi-automatic weapons in the United States?
There are a number of weapons out there with a number of ranges. Again, an advance was completed. The determination of the perimeter, I'm not going to speak to specifics, but there are a number of factors that are taken into account when we determine our perimeter. Some of it has to do with terrain, some of it has to do with buildings, some of it has to do with assets and resources that are available.
And so what I'm hearing is that a perimeter was not established outdoors in an outdoor venue that would prevent an AR-15, which is one of the most common weapons used in mass shootings, from being able to be within the range of Secret Service protection.
A perimeter was established, and even though there were buildings that were outside of that perimeter, it wasn't just that building, there were a number of buildings in the area, and there was overwatch that was created to help mitigate some of those buildings.
Was Mr. Crooks acting alone?
Again, I would have to refer you to the FBI's investigation.
Was he just a lone gunman?
I would have to refer you to the FBI's investigation for motive.
What did the Technical Services Division determine was going to be the event perimeter?
Those are questions that we are asking, and we are
I mean, you're sitting here today. Come on, Director. Everybody said this. You knew you were going to be asked that question because it's been asked multiple times. So this is an easy one. What did they determine was going to be the event perimeter? So you should know that. I mean, this is not, gee, I got to wait till someone else tells me. What was it?
Again, I don't want to speak to specifics of the event.
Okay, this is a specific.
I understand.
This is a specific that you ought to know. As someone who said the buck stops with me, I'm going to stay in my job, I'm going to give the answers to the American people, and I know what happened, except for you're not going to tell us. And you're not going to tell the American people. And you yourself said in an interview that foments this notion of conspiracy theories. Guess what? When you sit here and repeatedly tell people, hey, I have to wait, as frustrated everybody on this committee, guess what? It undermines your credibility and whether you're really going to get to it. So I'm going to ask you again, what did the Technical Service Division determine was going to be the event perimeter?
We are still gathering reports. We are interviewing individuals.
You know what it is, though. No, you're just not going to tell us, right?
When I have those details, I will most certainly share those.
Was the gun already on the roof or did the shooter carry the gun up with him?
I do not have that information at this time.
Well, when was the last sweep of that roof done prior to the rally?
I do not have that information at this time.
Director Cheatle, the American people are watching, and they're wondering if there are any questions you can answer honestly today. So, Director Cheatle, I have a series of questions, very specific questions. I want very specific answers. Most of my questions are going to demand a yes or no answer. Do you understand?
I do.
Okay, my first question. Both sides of the aisle today have asked for your resignation. Would you like to use my 5 minutes to draft your resignation letter, yes or no?
No, thank you.
Was this a colossal failure?
It was a failure.
Yes or no? Was it a colossal failure is the question, yes or no?
I have admitted this is a terrible
This is a yes or no series of questions. Was this a colossal failure, yes or no?
Yes.
Was this tragedy preventable, yes or no?
Yes.
Has the Secret Service been transparent with this committee?
Yes.
Would you say the fact that we had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today as being transparent, yes or no?
I have always been eager
yes
to
or no?
come
You didn't
and
want to
talk
answer
to
the
committee.
question. We had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today. That is not transparent, by the way. You stated earlier Secret Service is not political. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say leaking your opening statement to Punchbowl News, Politico's Playbook, and Washington Post several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political, yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bullshit. You say you're fully cooperating with this committee. On July 15th, this committee sent you a list of demands of information that we wanted. Has the Secret Service provided this committee a complete list of all law enforcement personnel that were there that day? Have you done that? Have you provided a list to the Oversight Committee? Yes or no?
I will have to get back to you on that.
That is a no. Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you
That
on
is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
Chairman, I want to.
Come on.
We have to maintain decorum in this committee, no matter how
have you provided
upset we
any
get.
and all memos to this committee that we've asked you on July 15th? Have you provided all memorandums within the Secret Service?
I would have to get back to you on
that. Is a no. You are being dishonest or lying. You're being dishonest here with this committee. These are important questions that the American people want answers to, and you're just dodging and talking around it in generalities. And we had to subpoena you to be here, and you won't even answer the questions. We have asked you repeatedly to answer our questions. This isn't hard. These are not hard questions. Have you provided us all communications from the Secret Service related to that day and that rally? Have you provided this committee? We've asked for this information on July 15th. Have you provided any of this information that this committee has asked of the Secret Service? Any of it?
I'll have to get back to you.
Have you even read this letter that we sent you? Did you even read this?
Yes.
Okay. And you have said you don't know, you have no idea. Well, the answer is no. We haven't gotten a single document or piece of information or data from you or your agency in related to the rally that we have asked you for. So was this attempted assassination of Donald Trump a failure of training or execution or both?
I think that those are answers that we need to examine.
Training, execution, or both? Which one?
I think those are answers.
All right. How many Secret Service personnel have lost their jobs due to this colossal failure?
At this time, none.
How many Secret Service personnel have been required to take a refresher course on how not to let people shoot Donald Trump?
Our personnel are currently operational. We are examining the facts of this investigation, and we will make the changes necessary.
What time did law enforcement become aware that there was an individual on the roof with a clear line of sight to President Trump?
I am still verifying timelines.
Of course. 9 days in, you have no answers. How many minutes went by between the time law enforcement saw and took photos of crooks and the shooting? How many minutes?
I am still verifying timelines.
57 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
He said, do you know this information? And you acknowledge that, yes, you do know the information, you just don't want to tell us. I guess my question is that if you wanted to wait till the end of the investigation to draw conclusions, which you've acknowledged you're not, you're drawing conclusions right now and making changes. But if that was your standard, that you want to wait till the end of the investigation to draw conclusions, okay, at least you would be consistent in that. But what we're wanting to know today, and what would dispel some of the conspiracy theories out there, what would increase trust with the American people, is for you to let facts out, for you to tell us what you know. And I want to understand from you, why is that a problem? Why is it inconsistent with a quality investigation to release to the American people today at least the information that you know for sure? Because you certainly know for sure more information than you're willing to give us today.
I have released that there was a failure and that there are gaps that we need to make sure that they don't happen again.
That's not acceptable. That's not enough. That doesn't quell any conspiracy theories out there. In your 27 years of experience, would you have been concerned about an elevated location within 150 yards of a protectee that did not have a Secret Service presence? Just based on your experience.
What I can tell you is that every site and every venue
No. I'm asking for your experience. Looking at this situation, would that have been of concern to you? Or would you have agreed that it's fine, it doesn't need to be covered?
What I have explained today
You're
is
not going
that
to answer.
there was...
Is it true that at 5:45 p.m., approximately 18 minutes before President Trump took the stage, the Beaver County Emergency Services Unit noticed the shooter on the roof and photographed him? Is that a fact or not?
That is the information that I have from the FBI's report, yes.
Is it suspicious or threatening if an individual is seen around the perimeter with a rangefinder? Is that just suspicious?
That could be termed as suspicious.
If that same individual with the rangefinder is found on a rooftop, is that still just suspicious, or is that considered threatening?
That could be termed still as suspicious.
All right, my time is over. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
How many times was the Secret Service alerted about a suspicious person at the July 13th campaign event prior to the first shot being shot?
I don't have an exact number to share with you today, but from what I've been able to discern, somewhere between 2 and 5 times there was some sort of communication about a suspicious individual.
To the Secret Service specifically?
Mm-hmm.
How did a 20-year-old loner with a week's notice pick the absolute best location to assassinate President Trump when the entire Secret Service missed it? Director Cheatle, in your leadership, your agency got outsmarted and outmaneuvered by a 20-year-old. How can we have any confidence that you could stop a trained professionals from a nefarious nation state?
Those are absolutely questions that we need to have.
I know they're
answers
questions,
to.
but you know, the fact of the matter is we can't have that confidence. Director, do you have the ability personally, and do you have the authority to beef up security of any of your protectees?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So were you also aware there was a credible threat President Trump was facing? He was facing a heightened security threat to a foreign adversary?
Yes.
Okay. So given that there was an increased threat to President Trump's life, was he provided a full security complement akin to what a sitting U.S. president would receive?
He was provided a full complement of security based on the threat assessment that we had.
That's not my question.
And the venue.
My question is, if he'd been the sitting president, would he have had the same security he had on July 13th, or would have been beefed up?
There is a difference between the sitting president.
So your answer is he didn't.
And continuity of government and the responsibility
So he
that we
did
have.
not. Okay, there wasn't a CAT team, a full CAT team on site. There wasn't counter-surveillance teams on site. But this is the thing. You just said you had the ability to beef up the security. You knew about the threat, and you didn't. And that's as telling as it is chilling. We have satellite images from the Butler Fairgrounds. Have you visited the site?
No, I have not.
9 days and you have not visited the site. You should have been there that night. Did you talk to, that evening, did you talk to the team, the heroes that surrounded the president? Did you call them that night?
They were still operational work.
So that's an answer is no. Did you call them the next day?
President. Yes, I spoke with
You called them the very next day, not the day of, or was it 72 hours after?
I don't know the timeline, but I spoke with
Okay,
them
because you're under oath.
immediately
I
following.
think it was 72 hours after. You waited 3 days. What is immediately clear is that there are a number of structures that need to be secured. Of these, Director, other than the first, immediate 4, what's the most dangerous site that should have been secured? Because security 101, you got to mitigate the high ground.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the next most dangerous site, what was the closest structure to the president, other than the 4 immediate ones that you had your counter sniper teams on?
There are a number of structures around that event site.
You know who the shooter knew? The shooter has visited the site 2 more times than you have, and he had a drone, and he picked the AGR building. So you said, do you remember in an ABC interview you did that you didn't have people on the roof of the AGR building because you were worried about safety because of the slope?
I recall that statement.
Okay. Does the Secret Service have written policy you can share with us about slope roofs?
No.
Okay. So why'd you act like there was one? Because is it your practice to comment on enormous events of enormous national implications when you're ignorant of the facts? That's rhetorical. So here's this thing with the slopes. You go all the way up to like 1812. You can go to a 112, which is about as flat as you can get without it being completely flat. And you're saying that there was a danger, safety concern there. But the problem is, Director, you put your counter snipers on a 312 roof, which is steeper than the 112. And by the way, the 112 is ADA compliant. You can build a ramp for a wheelchair on a 112 roof. So these are nothing but pathetic excuses, and they make no sense, and they're a bunch of cow dung. All the law enforcement I've spoken with over the last 9 days are amazed that the AGR rooftop was not secure. And you want to know why? Because it's dangerous. I have never had any long gun training in my life. I own an AR-15, and last time I shot it one time my whole life. It was 6 years ago. That is until Saturday, where we recreated the events in Savoy, Texas, where we recreated what happened in Butler. I was lying prone on a sloped roof at 130 yards at 6:30 at night. And I knew that he had a scope. I didn't know what kind, red dot or magnified. So I shot 8 rounds from both. You know what the result was? 15 out of 16 kill shots. And the one I missed would have hit the president's ear. That's a 94% success rate. And that shooter was a better shot than me. It is a miracle President Trump wasn't killed. Corey Comparatore's life is over because that damn shooter made it on the roof. And it wasn't the roof that was dangerous. It was a nut job on top of the roof. You know what else is dangerous? I believe your horrifying ineptitude and your lack of skilled leadership is a disgrace. Your obfuscating today is shameful. And you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
At what time was Secret Service aware of the active threat against President Trump? Director, what time?
So the Secret Service was aware that there was an individual who had been identified as suspicious, and that individual was attempting to be tracked down.
At what time?
I don't have a specific timeline other than to tell
Director,
you,
it's been 9 days.
I understand
At what
that.
time?
I want to make sure that I give you factual information, sir.
Director, have you talked to the agents on the ground that day?
Yes, I have.
You've talked to all of them?
Mm-hmm.
Your senior team has talked to every agent that was on the ground that day?
Yes, we have.
Have they all corroborated the same time they identified the shooter or they were made aware of the shooter, either by attendees in the crowd or a local police department?
There are a number of reports of when those times were made.
Was it
those
5 minutes
notifications.
before the first shot rang out?
No.
Generally speaking, was it 10 minutes before the first shot rang out?
No. It
Was it 15 minutes before the first shot rang out?
It was less than that time frame when it was identified as a threat.
How many days before the shooting took place did Secret Service actually do their advance work to secure the facility that the rally was going to be held at?
5 days.
In the 5 days prior, when the security advance team did their work, did they identify the rooftop as a potential threat?
Again, I'm pulling those reports and that information.
It's been 9
to
days,
conduct those
Madam Director. Did they notice a rooftop 150 yards away that was a potential threat? Yes or no?
I am certain that the rooftop was noticed. I am pulling the reports.
What was the security parameters around securing that rooftop? What did they do?
There was overwatch provided for that rooftop.
Did Overwatch fail?
I am waiting to hear what the results of the investigation were so that I can identify where the failure was.
Who did you talk to that was on the ground that day that was responsible for Overwatch? What are their names?
I'm not going to provide their names in this setting.
Because I'm quite sure somebody saw under your organization, the Secret Service, I'm quite sure somebody saw the shooter on the roof. So what was the communication through the chain of command to deal with said person?
What I can tell you is that when the individual was identified by the counter sniper, they took one shot and neutralized that individual.
But that was after the shooter already took a shot. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So what you're saying now is that the Secret Service did not see the shooter on the roof until after the shooter took a shot?
I do not have all of those details at this time.
If you don't have those details after 9 days, Director, then what you're telling me is that you guys didn't see it. Is that correct?
I am telling you I don't have all the details of the sequence at this time.
Director, it's been 9 days. Either you have the information or you do not. Is that correct?
We are still in the process of conducting interviews and an investigation.
I'm guessing you have factual information as to when the suspicious photograph of the suspicious person was relayed to the Secret Service. There's a timestamp on that text message or whatever it was, correct?
Sir, I'm sure you can understand that when you're dealing with text messages, emails, and other communications, the timelines don't always match up.
Not really if they're timestamped.
Does it appear he acted alone?
That's the information we have at this time.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the fact that he was noticed as a person of interest, of concern, suspicion, as you say. Your PI team, how do they stay in? There's a sea of people. How does the PI team get to that individual that's in question in the sea of people? How's that individual tracked?
Our protective intelligence teams that work at our sites are paired up with a local police counterpart, and so they work in conjunction together.
So they just follow them around, or let me ask you this. Looking at the site, you have multiple perimeters, right? You have the secure perimeter, the inside perimeter, you have multiple perimeters. Was the AGR so-called building the highest location affecting the site of the rally? Was it the highest location?
I believe the highest location at the site was where our counter snipers were.
What about the water
positioned.
tower adjacent? What about how high is the water tower?
I don't have the height on the water tower.
Okay, seems like water towers are pretty high, at least in the photo. It looks like there might be actually be a building right behind the AGR building that is even higher than the building that Crooks fired from. You're familiar with cover, concealment, and defilade, right? You're familiar with those terms?
Yes.
So how would your sniper team or your PI team track the individual and give vectors to Secret Service on the PI team to get to that individual to question him? And how would you cover the defilade, the cover and concealment of low areas that you can't see from where your sniper team immediately adjacent to the president were sighted? How would you do that if you're not up on the high ground?
So when our counter sniper teams go out and conduct an advance, they have a methodology and provide a grid system that our response teams are able to vector in if they see something that is troubling.
Was there a device located on Mr. Crook's body to detonate the vehicle?
That is the information that I have.
So what would be the point of detonating the vehicle if it was not inside the perimeter?
I have no idea what Mr. Crook's motivation was.
Ma'am, the fact that you haven't, I'll close with this, Mr. Chairman, haven't even visited the site. I understand there are other things going on, but the culture of your organization, the culture that doesn't, do you know how tall the president is? How tall is the president? President Trump, how tall is he?
He's over 6 feet tall. I don't
Okay, so do you assign agents based on their ability to cover physically and carry, if necessary, the President of the United States when you assign them to this mission? Is that a parameter that is considered?
I assign agents to work our protectees that are capable and have been trained by the Secret Service.
I understand they're trained, but if you're not tall enough, it has nothing to do with, we're not mad at you, but if somebody's 7 feet tall and you're 5 feet tall, there's going to be a delta there that is problematic in protecting the protectee. And I'm asking, is that a consideration when these agents, not saying you, but when they're assigned to the protectee?
The agents that are assigned to our protectees are perfectly capable.
Okay, ma'am. So
of
the
providing
culture is what I'm
protection.
concerned about, because the primary objective here seems to be something other than securing the site, securing the principal, and securing the people at the site. And that's the concern based on the answers that you've given today so far.
Did you happen to catch the hearing many months ago in education where there were a bunch of university presidents, and Elise Stefanik asked a very easy question and couldn't get an answer? Did you see that hearing?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay, well, let me tell you, it didn't go well, and the short end of that story was those university professors all resigned. They're gone. That's how this is going for you. This is where this is headed, okay? This is, I don't know who prepared you for this. I don't know how many times you've testified in front of Congress. But a president was almost assassinated live on television, not just for Americans, but for the world to see. And this being your first opportunity, I understand there's an ongoing investigation. I understand there's things that you can not talk about. But the idea that we're getting less than you did on television is something that Democrats, Independents, or Republicans are going to find unacceptable. If Trump had been assassinated that day, if the gunman had succeeded, okay, would you have come and tendered your resignation?
I would still be sitting here because I would want to ensure the integrity of the investigation.
Totally
that would move
understand.
forward.
That's a fair answer, that you would have set up that process. But would you have had the honor to come in front of the committee and say, a president was former president was assassinated on my watch, there should be new leadership?
I think that I have admitted that there was
No, that's what I'm asking. Would you have
failure
tendered your resignation if he had been killed?
that occurred on my watch, and I am accountable for that.
Okay, but would you have tendered your resignation if he had been killed?
I think that I've admitted that I've taken accountability and will take responsibility.
Did the First Lady's event get 12 assets and Trump's get 3 from the Pittsburgh field office? That's a yes or no question. If you don't know, don't answer it. I mean, if you don't know, don't
The number
answer
of
it.
personnel that were allocated to both of those events were comparable to the risk at both of those events.
Wow. Really? So you think that the Pittsburgh casino, 400-person in a ballroom with ingress, egress through probably a very well-guarded parking garage was 4 times more dangerous than a 20,000-person rally on an open field with the former president and future president? You think that that's 4 times more dangerous, the casino event?
I didn't say that at all.
Well, they got 4 times the resources from the Pittsburgh field office, who was likely in charge of the final walkthrough for both events. Who made the decision to deploy 12 to the First Lady's event and 3 to the Trump event?
The allocation of resources is decided based on the availability of personnel and their location and where they are, but there were sufficient resources
What did you just
that
say?
were given to
Did you just say there were
former
sufficient
presidents.
resources? President Trump
Event
got
that
shot. Someone got killed. There were not sufficient resources, clearly.
There was
and
a
it
gap.
doesn't take 27 years of experience to know that. And whoever made that decision, it probably wasn't you, needs to be fired. And then you need to resign, because this is absolutely unacceptable and you've lost the trust of the American people.
Was the roof identified as a potential vulnerability days before the rally?
To my knowledge, yes, it was.
Were agents or officers inside the building? If so, what floor were they on?
We had local police officers inside the building.
The roof looks like it's a tin roof. How did no one inside that building hear someone moving on top of a metal roof?
I don't have the details of all of the interviews that have been conducted yet.
When will you have those?
I have been asking, and I want to have that information as soon as you do
Okay,
as well.
why did Secret Service fail to block the line of sight from that roof?
I think that the Secret Service put together a plan where they were counting that roof in as part of their overwatch, and that was the plan that they had put in place that day.
If you weren't going to put a security personnel on the roof, why not at least use drone technology or aerial surveillance to monitor the rally?
There are a number of times that we do use drone technology. I'm not speaking specifically to this event and what was utilized or not. There are times when drone technology is available and helpful at events, and there are times when it is not appropriate.
Do y'all use Signal? Do you personally use Signal to communicate with any official from the White House? Signal on your phone.
Oh, on occasion, I'm sure that there are people that use Signal, yes.
Okay. Do you use it to speak with the White House? Use Signal?
No, I do not.
Why was there a different detail on the opening night of the convention than the detail that was guarding him in Pennsylvania?
The president has a very large permanent protective detail assigned to him. They work shift work, and so it could be that people you saw at the rally were not working the same shift the day that he was.
I can assure you, ma'am, somebody that's a lot shorter than the president was not at the convention, and the people that were cowering down behind the mass of agents that were on top of the president were not in the convention hall. At least I didn't see them.
Was the incident on July 13th due to DEI, or rather systemic failures in communication and potentially safety protocols?
The incident on the 13th has nothing to do with DEI. The incident on the 13th has to do with a failure or a gap either in planning or communication.
The site team has a senior supervisor, an advanced team, a protective intelligence team, a counter sniper element, and detail. Who was the agent in charge? How long has she been the agent in charge? And what is her Secret Service background?
So I'm not going to provide a name.
Why not? You're here to answer our
In
questions.
this forum, I'm not going to provide names of.
You stated in your testimony, you said, I am here today to answer your questions.
That is correct.
Answer the question.
I'm not going to provide names of our personnel.
Why not?
Today.
The American people are demanding these answers from you today, Ms. Cheatle.
I will do the best to provide you accurate information based on the facts that I have at this time.
You're not answering our questions. The advance element coordinates with other intel or law enforcement partners, identifies threats and weaknesses at the sites and movements. We'd like a copy of the advance report. Have you brought it here with you today?
We will comply with the request for the documentation that has been requested.
When will that be, Ms. Cheatle? Because you should have brought it today.
I am certain that our personnel are working on obtaining all of that documentation.
I don't believe you, and neither do the people watching this hearing. You're not doing well, as Mr. Moskowitz informed you. You've been sitting here for over 3 hours, and I have you know the entire country is demanding you resign and demanding that you be fired if you do not resign. Things are not going well for you. You need to answer the questions. Was there a protective intelligence team, and what technical resources were utilized for that event, specifically drone or helicopter assets?
There were a number of technical assets that were deployed for that event, and there was a protective intelligence team that was assigned to that event.
Why was Crooks able to fly a drone over the entire area the day of the rally and the day of his assassination attempt?
To my knowledge, he did not fly the drone over the entire area.
How did he fly a drone over the area, period? Any part of the area?
Again, I would have to go back and check the timeline of when that took place and when the event.
Why didn't you bring the timeline with you today to answer our questions?
I don't have all of the answers on the timelines based on the criminal investigation.
Were you not prepared today to answer our questions?
I am prepared to answer the questions based on the information and wanted to be able to provide.
Do you have a timeline that do you have a timeline at all from any of the day?
I have a timeline that does not have specifics.
That's shocking. That is absolutely unacceptable. That means you are a failure at your job. At what point is he determined a threat?
An individual with a backpack is not a threat. An individual with a rangefinder is not a threat.
What about a man laying on a building that has direct line of sight of President Trump with a gun that people are screaming and pointing out? Is that a threat, Ms. Cheatle?
Once that individual was identified, they were neutralized.
No, they were neutralized. Crooks was neutralized after he shot President Trump in the face, Ms. Cheatle. Is he only a threat once he fires the weapon?
As soon as the counter sniper identified that individual, they were able to neutralize them.
How were people in the crowd? Okay, then let's just take it this way. People under your command did not consider him to be a threat, yet people in the crowd knew he had a gun and considered him to be a threat. That means that you are a complete failure as the director of the Secret Service, that people under your command don't perceive a man laying on a roof with direct line to the president with a gun. They don't perceive that to be a threat, yet the people in the crowd do. How is that possible?
That's the last question, but please answer the question, Ms. Director.
I'm not certain at this time how the information from the people in the crowd was relayed to any law enforcement personnel.
No, you knew, that everyone knew. The people there knew that there was a danger. They knew there was a threat to President Trump, and it was allowed to happen. Was there a stand-down order, Ms. Cheatle? No. Was there a conspiracy to kill President Trump?
Absolutely not.
Then how did this happen? And why are you still sitting here not turning in your letter of resignation?
Last question, but please answer, and then I'll recognize Ms. Presley. Please answer that question. Director.
That is what we are investigating to determine.
You keep referring to the FBI. When asked how many shell casings were on the roof, you referred to the FBI. When asked if there were explosives in the car, you referred to the FBI. When asked if Crooks was acting alone, you referred to the FBI. See a common theme here? I can go on and on. My question is, who at the FBI should I speak with? Wait for it. Wait for it.
The FBI is responsible for the criminal
Is there a name?
I'm not certain.
I'm not certain. All right, here we go. I'm not certain. I don't know. Let me ask a different question. Have you been in communication with the FBI?
Yes, I have.
With whom?
I speak with the director and the deputy director.
Okay. And what have they shared with you about this investigation? So I'll give you an opportunity to answer again. Did they share with you how many shell casings were on the roof?
They have shared with me the evidence.
Did they share with you how many shell casing were on the roof?
Yes.
Okay, how many were there?
I would refer to the FBI for
how
their investigation.
Many were there?
And their information that they need to share in their investigation.
So they've shared the information with you. You just don't want to share the information with us, correct?
We have concurrent investigations that are going on.
So they have shared this information with you. You know the answer to the question. You just refuse to answer the question from the member of Congress who has subpoenaed you to be here. Is there a different answer to that question?
I was always willing to come here and testify before this oversight hearing.
Beautiful. Then let's do that. Let's for once have your actions match your words. So you've been in communication with the FBI. You know the answers, and you refuse to tell us the answers. So I will ask you again. You know how many shell casings were on that roof. What is the answer to that question?
I think it's pertinent.
What is the answer to that question?
I think it's pertinent to talk to you about the information that the Secret Service has and that the Secret Service knows related to the
I'm asking you an
that
answer to the question. If you're supposed to be in charge, if the buck stops with you, how come you can't share the answers? What are you covering up? What are you hiding, my friend?
I'm not covering anything up.
Then why can't you answer a simple question?
I would leave it to the criminal investigation to answer questions related to that.
And he was never located by an agent?
To my knowledge, that individual was not located by an agent.
We have dozens of rally goers who have identified him, and not one agent on the ground. There are many, many, many agents on the ground, local law enforcement, Secret Service. No one was able to identify him and have sights on and see him.
What I'm saying is that the agents that were on the ground at the time, I have no knowledge that they were able to interview him or locate him.
Thank you. Was there a local law enforcement officer who approached the roof and saw the shooter and saw that he was present on the roof?
That is the information that has been shared with me.
Have you spoke to that local law enforcement officer?
No, I have not.
Are you going to?
It is part of a criminal investigation that the FBI is interviewing those individuals.
Were agents stationed on the water tower?
No.
Why?
That would not be something that would be included in a security plan.
Has the man who is reported to have been present wearing a gray suit who allegedly requested a photo of the dead body of the assassin on top of the AGR roof been identified?
I don't have that information.
Is that something that you've heard of?
No.
Were ATF agents present at the rally?
To attend or to work?
To work.
Not to my knowledge.
How many other security lapses have occurred with protectees under your watch?
I don't have a specific number, but there have been some lapses.
There have been other lapses. Was one of them Jake Sullivan?
Yes, sir.
What happened there?
There was an individual who was able to access Mr. Sullivan's residence.
His residence. A protectee, somebody was able to break into his house. And what happened? Did anyone get fired because of that?
There were individuals who have been reassigned.
Reassigned. What other steps have taken? What I'm seeing. What other incidents have occurred other than Jake Sullivan? Was there an issue with the Secret Service agent and Vice President Harris?
I would not call that a security incident.
Well, it seems to me, I mean, you have security lapses with President Trump. You have security lapses with Jake Sullivan. You have issues with your personnel related to Vice President Kamala Harris. There seems to be a repeated theme here. Would you not agree with that?
I think that we are talking about separate categories of incidents.
Well, I would disagree with that. I think there's a repeated theme when you've got protectees and you're not upholding your core mission. Let me ask you something else. Does the Secret Service routinely record communications between and amongst detail?
Radio communications?
Any communication?
Email communications are captured, as well as text messages, and then depending on the detail, radio communications are recorded.
Does the Secret Service have recorded communications from the July 13th event?
We do not have radio communications from that day.
But you have text messages?
We do have emails and text messages.
Emails, okay, great. Does the head of the Trump detail or someone else embedded in this detail have command decision-making authority, or do they need to seek authorization from someone outside that detail?
The head of the detail has the decision-making authority for things that are necessary for that detail.
You, at least in an effort to dispel conspiracy theories, can you confirm or deny that?
At this time, we do not have that there were any other people engaged.
So you believe he was acting alone?
I do.
Okay. Have you been made aware of multiple eyewitness reporting that there was a second shooter on a water tower?
I do not have any information related to any second shooter.
Okay, the reason I asked that is because according to testimony from multiple witnesses, they did report that. And again, to my understanding, there were over 40 sniper teams that were briefed by the Butler ESU. And I want to make sure that people are aware, if you're saying that there's not another shooter, that we are able to clear that information, because from this whole entire briefing, it doesn't seem like much information has been able to get out to the American people. So I'm trying to dispel rumors, as I'm sure you understand. Was it true that Secret Service was present at the Butler ESU briefing?
There was a briefing between the counter sniper teams that were working on the ground.
Was Secret Service present?
Yes, to my knowledge.
Okay, I want to read you a report from people that seem to be throwing you under the bus and stated that they were in attendance and that Secret Service was not in attendance at the security briefing, according to individuals with knowledge, to also include that the AGR building where the shooter Thomas Matthew Crooks was located was actually not a part of their security perimeter for that. So there was not Secret Service present. It seems as though that when you were asked earlier from Rep. Kristamorthy about whether or not Secret Service was aware of a threat, you had said no, they were unaware of a threat. And yet, according to communications, again, from law enforcement that were in some of these group chats, they actually had reported that Secret Service was made aware of a threat at around 5:59 p.m. as a part of the command, including Secret Service, aware of messages and requests about information about the suspect's location. Can you please tell me if you have knowledge of that at all?
Again, I think we're conflating the difference between the term threat and suspicious.
But you guys did have knowledge at 5:59 p.m. according to those group chats, did you not?
Of a suspicious individual.
Did local law enforcement alert the Secret Service about Crooks' presence at the rally?
Yes, they did.
The shooter came to attention of law enforcement almost an hour before President Trump went on stage. Law enforcement alerted the Secret Service of the shooter. Over and over, you've said there's a difference between a suspicious individual and a threatening individual. Can you explain what the shooter needed to exemplify to be called a threat?
So I'm not clear as to what identified him as suspicious to the individuals who originally clarified him that way. For the Secret Service, for an individual to be determined to be a threat, that individual would have to be seen with a weapon or capable of doing some sort of harm to our protectees.
I mean, Director, an individual walking into a rally with a rangefinder, scoping out an unprotected rooftop, and he reportedly flew a drone over hours before. It sounds like a lot more than suspicious, especially at a presidential rally.
Representative Boebert asked earlier about using encrypted apps that you said you've not used, I guess, Signal. Have you used any encrypted app to communicate from your personal device?
I do, on occasion, use encrypted apps to communicate.
So you use some form of an encrypted app to communicate with people within the federal government, with local law enforcement? Whom are you communicating using the encrypted apps?
Many times it's with colleagues and associates.
So you're communicating with colleagues on a personal device?
There are times that the Secret Service, when we work internationally with some of our partners, that they don't have the same texting capability.
And you're not able to do that with your government-issued device?
Recently, we have been able to install some of those apps on government devices.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the things that we can get access to. I'm actually shocked that you are using your personal device and encrypted communication tools. I think that might be the most shocking thing that I've heard today. I didn't expect for you to say that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Director, please, I'd like to direct your attention to this video.
And I sincerely appreciate the clarity on this.
Can we turn up the volume, staff?
I just want to ask you, because this has popped up. Republican Congressman Mike Walz, he said on social media on Saturday, and I'm going to read this for you because it does talk about you, Secretary. I have very reliable sources telling me that there have been repeated requests for stronger Secret Service protection for President Trump denied by Secretary Mayorkas. Your department has already pushed back on that, calling that absolutely false, but he is putting this on you. Can you respond to that, please?
Well, that is, yeah, that's a baseless and irresponsible statement, and is one that is unequivocally false.
Director Cheatle, did you speak with your boss, Secretary Mayorkas? You fall under DHS. Did you speak with him on the 14th, the day after?
Yes, I did.
So you spoke with him before he made that statement?
I spoke with him immediately following the incident.
Did you inform him that all requests for additional resources for President Trump had been fulfilled? Or that it was false to say they had been denied?
I informed him that the request for that rally that day had been fulfilled.
Okay, you continue to answer that very carefully. Because I made a broader statement, the agents that came to me made a broader statement that his permanent protective detail for years now have been asking for more. Is that correct?
I do not have specific incidents of those requests.
Is it correct that they've been asking for more?
I have heard the same reports that you have. Without having them in front of me, I am unable.
Those requests are made in writing. I mean, the agents are telling me they make them in writing. This isn't a verbal agency. Things are made in writing.
I understand what you're saying. I don't have those requests in front of me here.
I'm not asking if you have them in front of you. Are you aware that they were made?
As I said earlier, there are times when requests are made, and depending on the availability of assets, or if there is a way that
So there were times when they were denied?
If there is a way that vulnerability can be mitigated in a different way, then that is why
So there are times when they were denied, for a variety of reasons?
That is why the Secret Service has a multi-layered and multifaceted security plan so that we can pivot if we need to.
In the wake, in the immediate 48 hours of an assassination attempt on a former president, could be the next leader of the free world, almost had his head blown off, your boss says that's irresponsible and false to say things are denied. And you had talked to him. So did he just make that up on his own, or did you tell him that?
We were speaking about the requests made at the rally.
Staff, can we show the next slide, please? Then we have your spokesman. Did you sign off on this statement? That there's an assertion that a member of the former president's team requested additional security resources and those were rebuffed? This is absolutely false. In fact, we added protective resources and technology and capability as part of the increased campaign travel tempo. But next slide, please. Next slide, please, staff. We have the Washington Post article that then says we now have senior Secret Service officials saying there were at times when it was denied. So which is it?
Again, there have been a number of conversations going on here.
Did you sign off on that spokesman's statement?
The spokesman's statement, I believe, was related to requests that were made.
Did you sign off on it?
For the requests that were made at the rally.
Did you sign off on the statement before it went out? I sign off on my press spokesman's statement before they go out. I would hope you would in the wake of an assassination attempt.
Yes.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
Categorically false that any requests were made. You signed off on it. Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarity. Madam Director, how many press conferences have you held since the assassination attempt?
We have put out press releases.
How many press conferences have you held? Gone to the mic, taken questions from the public, from the media? How many?
I have not held any.
How many has Secretary Mayorkas held?
I don't.
0. How many has the FBI held? 0. How many has the Department of Justice held? I know you know the answer.
I believe there was a press conference in Butler after the incident occurred.
By local law enforcement.
If there's no further business, without objection, the committee stands adjourned.